I've just been talking and talking. And I wasn't live. Can you see me now? 9 minutes of me just sitting here talking to myself. I used to do the same thing with StreamYard when I started with StreamYard. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Lisa, for that heads up. Can you see me now? My goodness. I don't know. Could you have heard me? You couldn't even hear me then, could you? Just sitting here. No wonder nobody's here. Everybody thinks I flaked. Oh, goodness. Yay. Good morning. I put the link up if you want to join me, Lisa, because I was just talking to you. I was telling you all about my morning and how I had planned to do certain things. Good morning, Tim. Good morning, Laura. I don't know. I thought I was live. I really thought I was live that entire time. I'm so sorry, guys. Let me start over. Good morning. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to tune up my ukulele. And I'm going to practice on my ukulele. And then on Instagram, I'm going to do one of those little songs where it says good morning. I know it's hard to wake up when the sun's in your eyes and life kind of sucks, but you got this. I'm going to do that with my little ukulele. So good morning, Baroque Cowgirl. How are you? And I see somebody said Denise. Did Denise pop in here? I'm so thankful to Lisa for letting me know that I had not gone live. Good morning, LP. Everybody have your coffee. I've got my coffee. It's a little cold now. Now I need a microwave up here, don't I? Because it's already chilled. This upstairs, it's nice and toasty since we've remodeled it, but it still gets chilly up here. Good morning, Huga. Baroque's been crocheting since Saturday, made 7 washcloths, all different stitches. Wonderful. And washcloths make such wonderful gifts. I've been doing all kinds of washcloths. I've got some of my my towels behind me on the chair. I think I've got 10 or 12 of them done, and I've got to get some more done. And I've been working on some of my not potting. Why do I want to say potting? My canning mats. And what I had shown earlier when I wasn't available to anybody. Good morning, Lynette. Was what I was going to do because I had put, on our little promo for this morning's live, it said, let's get together and have coffee and I'll crochet and blah, 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 blah. Coffee, chat, and crochet is what I had said. And as I'm going through everything, trying to reorganize my craft room, I'm finding so many whips. So if you crochet, you know what a whip is. A whip is a work in progress, WIP. And I have tons and tons of whips, things that I've started. And usually I start them right before a season, and then I'll make a bunch of them and I'll sell, but I don't always get them all finished. And then the season passes and it's like, I'll pick that up next season. So we're coming up on Christmas. And a couple of years ago, I made a bunch of little snowman hat, and they have different little tops on them. So this one's red. I've got blue and green little snowmen, and I crochet their little carrot noses. And then they get 2 little button eyes. So I thought, well, I'll just sit here and I'll put their little button eyes on while we're chit-chatting. And I'll complete a snowman. That way I can get it posted up on Marketplace, and I'll have a snowman ready. So I found my my yarn needles, and gosh darn it, if I can't find my buttons, they're still in the guest room. And I've got totes upon totes upon totes piled up yet that I still have to go through. But I'm getting all of my works in progress in 2 or 3 totes. I've got so many I need to finish. And so this little snowman's going to have to wait. But I love the little ties. They're just simple little ties. They look so cute on a little kid at wintertime. So I've got to get more of these done. And I showed you yesterday I had a Halloween one that was done, and I never did get it sold. And I missed the deadline now. I can't even sell that for Halloween. So I can't work on my snowman this morning. So then I thought, well, I'll just sit here and I'll work on one of my dish towels while we're chatting. And so I found the yarn that I wanted, and I found a towel to work on, and I got like I said, I have my needle. Well, I can't find a size J hook up here. And I showed you all of my hooks yesterday. Well, they're all behind the totes in the craft room. So I can't and I don't want to go back downstairs. It's so difficult on my knee. I try to limit how many times I go up and down these stairs. So what I did this morning is I do have a couple of orders for the canning mats So I'm just going to work on a canning mat. Good morning, Altruistic Farmstead. How are you? I just figured I'd work on a canning mat, and I will be doing a pattern to put up on Etsy and Ravelry. And also I will be doing a tutorial on how to do these, but not quite yet. So I want to get my pattern written out first, and then I want to get my tutorial taped. And then we can all work on these together. For those of you that crochet that maybe you don't want to purchase one from me, but you want to make one, I will be putting the pattern together so everybody can have that. But I think during the winter months, our coffee chat times will involve more just time up here in my craft room and doing some crafts and crocheting and doing some tutorials, because I won't be out in my summer kitchen as much as I was this past summer. So I think the summer times will be out in my summer kitchen, and the winter times will more than likely be up here in my craft room. Now, I tried doing a live out in the summer kitchen one time, and I didn't get good enough reception, and I had to run back in the house, and that didn't go well. Good morning, Susie. So, guys, how are you guys doing? How's everybody doing today? It's hump day, and it's the hump day after Thanksgiving. Is everybody all done with your leftovers? Yeah, thumbs up, guys. I'd appreciate it. I love them thumbs. My son came over yesterday and I said, hey, do you guys still have any leftovers? He says, oh, no, they already polished through all those leftovers. But my daughter-in-law made a ham and a turkey. There were 3 big trays of green bean casserole. She did homemade cranberry sauce, a big, huge tray of mashed potatoes, a big, huge tray of stuffing. She made so much food. And of course, I brought my own food. And, but he says, oh no, they've already polished all that food off. And it's like, my gosh, where did you put it? They must have hollow legs. There was so much food, but they polished it all off. And so now they'll be gearing up for their Christmas dinner. I have no idea what they're going to do for Christmas dinner. But once again, I will be taking my own plate. I was really proud of myself. Let's see, we haven't had a coffee chat really since Thanksgiving, have we? Comment on the side there in the little comment bar. I'd like to know everybody's favorite side dish from this Thanksgiving. Either if you had Thanksgiving at home, if you went to a family or a friend's, what was your favorite side dish this year for Thanksgiving? I think that would be an interesting thing to know from everybody. I packed my own meal. I had my vegetarian choice and some green beans, and I did very, very well. And I only had a tiny, and I mean tiny, little piece of pumpkin pie. It was really literally that wide. It's all I had. Good morning, Jess. Sweet potatoes and dressing. That was actually one of the things I had on my plate too, is I had roasted, or actually I popped it in the microwave to be truthful, a big sweet potato. And so I had a sweet potato with pecans and cinnamon, and then monk fruit sweetener. Who's heard of monk fruit sweetener before? My favorite is always the dressing. Ben, you've been eating leftovers, Baroque. Stuffing and dressing is my favorite, but it doesn't count. We had a fabulous Brussels sprouts with garlic and cheese. I'm not a fan. Jim loves Brussels sprouts. He really does. I just don't like brassicas that much. Have I ever eaten a Brussels sprout? Probably not. I think it probably has something to do with my childhood and how they were presented to me as a child. And I'm like, nope, not going to do it. Sweet potato casserole. Lots of sweet potato casseroles. I'll tell you what, and I didn't do it this year. I usually do it. But usually I make my sweet potato casserole, and instead of using marshmallows on top, because I won't eat marshmallows, I slice up a banana or 2 or 3, and I layer those on top, and then you bake it. Oh, they add such a beautiful sweetness, and then sprinkle it with pecans, and it really does make a really nice sweet potato casserole. And then you're not using the marshmallows, which I won't eat, but not this year. Lisa says stuffing and mashed potatoes and gravy are the favorites for her. But this year I just had the straight sweet potato, no casserole. I made sure I was aware of everything I put in my body. And Baroque hated cabbage as a kid, but now she loves it. See, I think the brassicas were I think they're just something I have to learn to love. Didn't like them either, but I learned what cooked well. They're awesome. And these were cooked in an Instant Pot type appliance. So they just kind of fell apart. Susie loves Brussels sprouts. Mashed taters. Favorite side was Wiley's mashed potato salad. Nice. A mashed potato salad. That's a spin, isn't it? I love making I love making potato salad in my Instant Pot. And the kids always ask for it every year. So I know next summer they'll be asking for it again, and I'll be making it, but I will be watching what I consume. Good morning, LP. And yes, cooked well, they are amazing. Roasted, they are amazing in a balsamic glaze. Now, see, I love balsamic. So I'll have to see if there's a way I can maybe do a balsamic glaze and maybe try the Brussels sprouts again. I don't know. It's the kind you make 2 pecans and brown sugar and butter and all of that on top. But I did monk fruit this time. I think you guys would be proud of me. I did not use regular brown sugar. I used the monk fruit sugar and the cinnamon and the pecans. And I've been really careful. I've been really diligent. I've been active. I've been watching what I've been eating. And I will tell you that this morning my blood sugar was 147. That's the lowest I've had it in a after sleeping, so like a fasting mode and waking up in the morning and taking my blood sugar 147. Not bad. Finishing up our meal for the homeless today. Wonderful. Oh, gosh darn it. This chat jumps so much more than the one in StreamYard. So now that I've said hello to everyone, I'm going to be lurking while you're listening and cooking. That is perfectly fine. You guys have a wonderful cause, and I certainly would want you to pay attention to that. Thank you, LP. Thank you, Lisa. So I've been working hard. It's still not where it needs to be, but Rome wasn't built in a day. It didn't take, 2 or 3 weeks for me to get my A1C up to 13.8. It's going to take a while for me to get it back down to where it's even presentable. Laura says the move is going okay. Your husband's been doing all of the work lately because you're sick. Yeah, I hope you're feeling okay, Laura. I saw that you weren't feeling well the other day. I hope you're on the mend, and I'll just leave it at that. But I did see your fireside chat the other day with you guys sitting by the fire. And I don't know. I remember something about your husband was going to blame you for something. Well, now he gets to do all the packing, so blame it on him. Anything goes wrong, blame it on your husband, because you're not feeling well. So nothing could be blamed on you if you weren't doing the packing. Oh, it was nice, though. You had a very nice crackly fire, and it just looked like your weather was perfect for just sitting outside and hanging out by the fire. Good morning, Kansas Misfit. Thank you. Welcome, welcome. I don't know. Can you guys see the little vintage Christmas card holder behind me? I got that for 25 cents. And at first it's like, I didn't even know what it was. I didn't know what it was. But it was so unique looking, and I got it for $0.25 at the thrift store. And once I really looked at it, I was like, oh, it's to hold Christmas cards. So I brought it up here when I first got it, and I hung it up in, I don't even know if this was the bedroom at the time, or had I already started making it into a craft room. I don't remember. But I've got some old pictures of my mother and father up there, and I'll probably be adding a few more. But I don't know if that's going to stay there, if I'm going to put something else there. I might move that somewhere else. You thought it was a dream catcher? It's metal. It's really old metal. It's really old. I have no idea how old it is. But it's really old. And those are like, they're not springs, those semicircle things, but they are what you tuck your postcards and your Christmas cards behind. So I just put some vintage pictures of my mom and my dad. Oh, and if you guys don't know that story of my mom and my dad, oh my gosh. What a story. Gosh darn, that was such a story. I couldn't believe it when I heard about their story. For those of you who don't know, I didn't meet my biological father until I was 43. And I didn't even fully know about my biological father until I was 43. And I had always suspected growing up that my dad was not my dad. I think at a very early age, even though I have no recollection of this, that's fine. Clean your kitchen. Clean your kitchen. I think when I was really, really little, my grandmother, not my mother's mother, but my dad's mother, the one we called Grambo, she obviously knew. Matter of fact, everybody in the family knew, but me. Everybody knew that my dad was not my dad. My brothers knew, my aunt knew, my grandmother knew, everybody knew that I was not my dad's kid. And I always suspected, but I never really had concrete evidence. But I think my grandmother, who must have been in her own way somewhat resentful, she wasn't a very kind, loving person. I shouldn't speak ill of the dead, but it's the truth. She was harsh. She grew up harsh and she kept going. So I think at some point she must have told me that my dad was not my dad, because my mother said from a very early age, 3, 4, 5 years old, I would walk up to men in church and ask them if they were my daddy. I mean, what little girl does that? What little girl walks up to strangers at church and asks them if they are your daddy? So something must have been put in my head early on. But I always felt like I was on the outside looking in my family. Always. There were always little things that just made me realize that I was kind of an afterthought. And one example of that is I remember we used to go to my aunt and uncles. I only had one aunt. My mother was an only child, and my dad only had a sister. So I only had one aunt growing up. We would always go to my aunt's for Thanksgiving and occasionally a Christmas. And we didn't really have Christmas growing up, but their Christmases were huge, huge. It's not speaking ill if it's speaking the truth. It's facts. That's how you see it. I get it. One year we had gone up. I was 8. I remember it. I was 8. And I remember their Christmases were so opulent and over the top. I mean, around the Christmas tree, there were so many presents. It was 10 feet out from the center of the tree, just presents everywhere. And I remember thinking when we showed up for Christmas, it was like, oh, I'm going to have a good Christmas, because we didn't celebrate Christmas. My parents believed it to be a pagan holiday, so we didn't celebrate it. I mean, we celebrated it up until a certain incidents that I think I've shared with you before. But I was so excited. And my little sister had this big package given to her for Christmas from my aunt and uncle. And I mean, it was big. Of course, I was 8 years old, so a medium-sized box would have been ginormous to me. But my sister gets this big box, and this is my little sister. So this is genetically, she belongs to this tribe genetically. Good morning, Chrissy. Oh, you got goodies yesterday. Good. She opened this box, and it was a life size for a 4-year-old. She was 4 years old. It was a life-size genuine Mickey Mouse. Huge. And it was like, oh my gosh. I mean, I don't even think we'd ever even been to Disneyland. But it was this big, huge Mickey Mouse. And she just loved it. And she toddled around the house with it. It's just wonderful. And then it was my time to get my present from my aunt and uncle. And I thought, if my sister got a full-size Mickey Mouse, I can only imagine what I'm going to get. I was so excited to get a gift. And I was given I'm not even going to say, I was going to say it was maybe the size. I mean, it was probably this thick, maybe a little bit smaller than my iPad in size. He handed me this little gift and I was like, oh, I opened it up and I can still feel, I don't even know what emotion to put with it. I don't know if it was just that I felt dejected. I don't know. Again, it's that I was an afterthought. I felt like I was an afterthought because I don't think they thought to get me a gift. And it was a last minute, oh my gosh, we didn't get Alicia a gift. So somebody ran to the store. And when you go, remember back when, and I don't know if they still do because I don't ever go down this aisle anymore, but remember when you would go to Safeway or Albertsons or Alpha Beta or whatever, Kroger, when you would go to the store and you would go down the aisle where the diapers and the baby supplies are, and they would usually have like little toys there and stuff. And thank you, Nisi. Remember they would have like just a tiniest little toy section, and they would have just little cheapy plastic little like cosmetic jewelry sets, like a really gaudy plastic ring with a plastic gem and little phony little clip-on earrings and a necklace. They paid like 99 cents or something for them. Do you guys remember those? Do you remember those little jewelry sets where you would just peel the plastic off the cardboard and you had all those 2, 3, 4 little pieces of little plastic, little pretend little jewelry? That's what I got. That's what I got for Christmas, where everybody around me, everybody they were all getting these really amazing gifts. All of my cousins, aunts, uncles. Well, like I said, I had one aunt, but her children were technically my cousins, but I called them my aunts because they were much older than me. They were born in the 50s. You remember those? And the plastic high heel shoes. I mean, it was just, it was just something that somebody ran into the store, ran down the diaper section aisle, and just found some little thing of cosmetic jewelry and ran back and they wrapped it up real quick. I remember drum sets and skateboards and all kinds of stuff for my cousins. And here I am, 8 years old. If I was 4, I maybe would have been excited to get it, but not 8, not 8. And I just remember feeling like such an afterthought. So I felt that way all my life in my family, but I never really vocalized it much. And unfortunately, it did cause a lot of issues with my younger sister and I because she was very favored and I was always the black sheep no matter what I did. So I always felt that I was this, square peg, never really fit in. And then I remember I must have been a teenager when I started hearing my mom and dad speak about how they met, dated, married, and I started putting timelines together. Oh, it's okay, LP. It's just one of those things where if you have, here's the lesson. If you have somebody that's brought into the family that might not be your flesh and bone, I mean, try to be, at least be equal. But anyways, when I was a teenager and I started hearing these stories about my mom and dad, I started saying, wait a minute here. The story goes that my mother was a nurse at the hospital and her charge nurse told her that, her son was single and she should go out on a date. And my mother was already seeing my biological father, but to keep things on the level, I guess, on the work floor, I mean, you don't turn down your charge nurse. She'll make your life miserable. I think my mother said, okay, I'll go out, I'll go to the movies or something. I think my dad actually brought his mother along on the date because I remember they said they got pulled over and my dad made a wrong turn or something and the police pulled him over and the cop asked him, what's going on? And he's like, hey, I'm on a date with this lady that I don't know and my mother's in the back seat. And the cop kind of laughed and he let him go. But my mother agreed to go out on a date with this man that she didn't know. She just knew that he worked at the hospital. She worked at the hospital. My grandmother ended up, she was the charge nurse. She worked at the hospital. So they went to go see an Alfred Hitchcock movie. And I can remember my mother telling this story about she really thought that this man sitting next to her at the movies was mentally unstable and psychotic because there was a scene in this Alfred Hitchcock movie. And I think the scene was, or the movie, I think through the rear window or down the staircase, or I don't know what movie it was. But my mother said there was a scene where somebody was shoving somebody into an oven to kill them. And they're shoving this person into an oven to kill them. And my dad is laughing hysterically. And my mother's thinking, oh, this guy's crazy. Who laughs? Who laughs at somebody being shoved in an oven? So I remember their date. But then when they tell people their story, like how sometimes I tell my story with Papa Jim, they would tell their story and they'd say, and we were married a week later. I mean, they knew each other a week before they went on a date, and then they were married a week later. So they really only knew each other 2 weeks when they got married. Now they got married on October 7th. So if you backtrack 2 weeks, mid to late September was when they first met. End of September, when they went out on their first date. October 7th, they're married. And I came along a healthy 7.5 pounds at the end of April. So October, November, December, January, February, March, April. That made me a 7-month full-term baby. Good morning, our new land. Your mom and dad were married 2 weeks after they met too. So this didn't make sense to me that I was born at 7 months when my parents only knew each other 2 weeks. But I never said anything. And there's a history behind it. Why I never said anything. That's something I'll go into another day. But I always felt it. And even my little sister, when my little sister learned about how to count, gestational time frames, even my sister confronted my mother at some point. I found this out later. My sister said, that doesn't add up. So my sister even knew that my dad was not my biological dad. Everybody knew but me. But in 2009, I don't even know how we got on this. Oh, because I was talking about the pictures behind me. My dad became very, very ill in 2009. And even though we never got an official diagnosis, we do believe it was mesothelioma. He had a lot of fluid in his lungs that they were always having to clear out, and he became very sick very quickly, but he was never officially diagnosed. It didn't even last that long. I think we noticed he was sick in June or July, and by the end of September, he was gone. But, and now there's no way to even find out if it was mesothelioma because of all of just the logistics and the legalities of it. Can't spell family without lies. Boy, isn't that true. So I had gone up a couple times to see my dad while he was in failing health. And my sister called one weekend and she said, you need to come up. And so we drove right up. And I sat a lot with my dad. My dad wasn't responsive anymore. And I sat a lot with my mom during those 2 days. And I think my mom sensed that the time was really near. So I was sitting in a chair next to her. She was sitting with her feet up. And she said, your dad loved you. Your dad really loved you. And she said, I remember when I woke up after I had you and I said, what do we have? And he said, oh, we have the most beautiful little girl. And she says, he was so proud. And so she goes, you just need to know that he loved you. And I know he did, but I was also on the other hand of, the other side of that coin was, I was treated differently. It wasn't really his. And that shone through the cracks every once in a while. So she started telling me about who my real father was. And I knew as soon as she started telling me this story, it's like, oh, finally, I'm going to find out who my father is. So I had my phone so my mother was blind, so she didn't know what I was doing. And I started kind of typing in little things she was telling me. And she had told me about, again, at the hospital, she was seeing a man at the hospital. It was like Peyton Place at this hospital. Oh my gosh. Because the grandmother worked there, my mother worked there, my dad worked there, my biological father worked there, and my dad's first son worked there. So there were at least 5 family members that worked at this one hospital. But my mother told me that she had just fallen madly in love with the new radiology tech that had started at the hospital. Now, my mother was a divorcee with 2 children, age 7 and 9, but she started seeing, actually, they would have been 6 and 8 at the time. She started seeing this man who's behind me here. And they started dating. And they just had one heck of a whirlwind romance. This was it. They were in love. Now, he was fresh out of the Army, and he was about 5 years younger than her. She was in her 30s, and he was, I believe when I was born, he was 28. So they just had a wonderful, wonderful time, full time together. In the middle of their courtship, her ex-husband showed up and just like packed her and the kids up one night and drove her to Texas and deposited her at her aunt and uncle's in Wink, Texas. And he told her, he said, you stay here in the, tumbleweed land of Texas for a year with your aunt and uncle, and you'll be begging to take me back. You'll want me back so bad. I mean, anyways. So my mother was down there in Texas with her aunt and uncle, and my mother would drive. She would have her aunt and uncle watch the boys, and she would drive to Jerome, Arizona. It's this little ghost town, Jerome, Arizona. And my biological father would drive down from Las Vegas, and they would meet in Arizona, and they would just have wonderful weekends together. He would never give me too many details. But he said they just had wonderful weekends together. And the picture closest to that cabinet is a picture of my mom sitting on a rock wall in that ghost town. It's a picture he took of her on one of their weekends. Was it the weekend I was conceived? Who knows? I don't know. No, it couldn't have been because that came later. Anyways, the year went by and her ex-husband showed up to pick her up, and he got her partway back to Vegas because that's where he was at the time. And he said, I can't do this. I can't do this to my girlfriend. So he drove her to Iowa, dropped her off at her parents. So now she's further away from my biological father. And she didn't say. It's the second time this hour you've heard of Wink, Texas. How funny. So she packed the boys up and she went back to Vegas because that's where Lyle was. Boy, my hair looks awful this morning. So, yeah, messed up, right? Yeah, I can't do this to my girlfriend. I've got my ex-wife and my 2 kids in the car, but I can't do this to my girlfriend. So, I mean, and this is a girlfriend he had while they were married, but I won't go into those details. But he came to get her, and she ended up back in Vegas and back with my biological father. And on a Saturday, this is how this part of the story goes. On a Saturday, my biological father took my mother and the 2 boys out for ice cream at a little ice cream parlor. And, my mom's trying to handle 2 kids, and she's got this man that she loves across from her at the table. And she says, I'm pregnant. And so here's this 28-year-old man with this older divorcee woman, and she says, I'm pregnant. She drops it on him over his, double scoop of compraline. And my mother says he didn't say a word. I mean, I really think it was a shock to him, and I think he got really scared. I don't think he knew what to do. And he said, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And she said he got up from the table and walked out the door and just left her there with two little kids with ice cream all over their face. So obviously she was devastated. That was not what she was pregnant. That's not what she wanted. She didn't want it to go that way. She wasn't expecting it to go that way. So that was on a Saturday. Sunday, she's working up on med-surg or wherever it is that I believe she was on a med-surg floor with her charge nurse. And she had gone into the nurse's lounge area for her break. And the charge nurse's son came in, who she had gone out on a date with the week before just to please her. He walked in and he said, hey, how was your weekend? And my mom broke down in tears and she said, what would you say if I told you that I'm pregnant and the father can't help me? And I don't know how long the pause was, but from what I gather, the pause was maybe a second or two. And this man said, well, what do I think? I think you should marry me because every baby deserves a father. And so here's my mother, divorced, 2 kids in the 60s, trying to make it on her own. And now she's pregnant, does not know what her options are. She can't go home to her parents because her parents, as much as I loved them, were the type of, you made your bed, now you lie in it type of a thing. And she didn't want to hear the I told you so's. So she said, okay. She said yes. She said that she would marry a man that she really didn't even know and she had only gone to the movies with, and she thought he was a psychopath. So she agreed to marry him for me. Hello, Scott and Tim, welcome. So that's on Sunday. On Monday, my biological father has pulled his head out of his butt enough to realize that he needs to step up and do the right thing. Loved my mother. I just think he was scared. And so he shows up to the hospital and he was approached before he made it to my mother. Now, who approached him was never revealed. Never revealed. I asked my biological father who it was. He would not tell me. I've discussed this with my cousin, his niece, and she believes it was my dad. This incident that happened, I don't believe my father would have done this. I believe the Grambo, I believe Grambo did this. I really, in my heart, and so did the rest of my family, believe that Grambo did this. But Grambo or somebody met my biological father in the hallway as he was on his way to profess his love to my mother. And they said, look, she has accepted the proposal of another man. And if you know what's good for you, and if you want to do what's right for that baby, you will step back because he can take care of that baby better than you can. Because remember, he's only 28. And the man who raised me at the time was 40. So I guess he felt that his life was threatened enough that he backed off and he didn't pursue it. So now my mother never knew this. She spent the rest of her life believing that he never came back for her. So my mother married this other man a week later. They went to Sizzler for dinner afterwards, and then the rest of their life. They were together 43 years. Now she's telling me this while the man who raised me, my dad, was, 5-6 feet from me in his deathbed. And my mother told me the name of my biological father, and I popped it in my phone. My sister's listening from the doorway. My sister ran into her computer. My sister used to repo cars, so she had all kinds of technology available to her to find people. It wasn't even 5 minutes that she found this individual who was my biological father. When you do a search for his name, there's only one. Only one. In an entire data search, there was only one man with this name. And he lived 7 miles away from my mom and dad. 7 miles. I could jump in the car and be there in 10 minutes and actually meet my biological father. It was crazy that he was that close. Right? It's like a movie. I've started blogging about it. But of course, I didn't call him right away because out of respect for my mother and my father. But, I went to my dad's bedside and I leaned over into his ear and I thanked him. And I said, thank you for doing that. You didn't have to do that. He didn't know my mother. He didn't love my mother. But thank you for doing that. Thank you for loving my mother for 43 years. And thank you for loving me. And thank you for giving me a chance at life. So I thanked him. And then I sat down next to his bed, and he had a little bit of like vomit start coming out of his mouth. So I washed it. I washed that up and I washed his face. And as I washed his face, he passed away. And I've had several people say to me, oh my gosh, why did your mother do that? What a terribly cruel thing to do, to tell you at that time. And I thought, I look back on it, it's like, no, it wasn't cruel at all. It was a gift. What a gift that was, because I had the chance to say something to my dad before he passed away. My final words to him were words of love and thankfulness. And had my mother not told me, had she waited until after he passed away, I would have missed that opportunity to do that. Use the same terms for your fathers as I do when I use the word dad when discussing my adoptive father. And father was talking about my birth father, because it became confusing. It became confusing for people. Once I met my biological father and I would say my dad, people are like, which one? So I refer to my dad as the one who raised me, and my father is the one who is my biological father. It was something I absolutely needed to know. Dad is a term that's earned. And, he was with me for 43 years, and I have some fond memories, but like I said, I never fit in. I was always that square peg, and then it kind of made sense why. So, I remember I took a walk outside when the coroner came to get my dad, and I slept with my mother that night, and just so I could comfort her and be with her. And when we had her come over to the bed as he was taking his last breaths and stuff, she said, oh, he was such a wonderful life mate. But she never said he was her true love or her soulmate. She said he was a wonderful life mate. And I remember there were times when my mother would come stay with Jim and I, to see us and be with the grandkids and spend a week or two with us. She would always say, it must really be wonderful to be married to your best friend. She was, I wish I knew that feeling. And it would always confuse me because I thought my mom and my dad got along very well. But, and I knew that this is the way I see things. I didn't plan on getting this deep this morning, so I apologize. My parents loved each other, but my parents were not in love with each other. And I think there is a huge difference. You can marry somebody you love, but boy, don't marry them unless you're in love. I think there's such a huge difference between loving someone and being in love with someone. So my mother was in a marriage that she loved my dad, but he wasn't her soulmate. right? They married out of duty. My mother married out of duty. And I carry a lot of guilt over that because that meant what my mother did for me meant that then my two older brothers were subjected to a life of Grambo. And boy, she was something. I don't like this one part of my hair that's sticking up funny. Grambo was something to be reckoned with. She earned that name, Grambo. So in January, so 4 months after my dad passed away, I called the number that my sister had found. It will last any love. It will last more than any love. I called my biological father, and I asked him if his name was Lyle, and he said yes. And I said I was just up in the Vegas area because my dad passed away. And I said, I believe you worked at Southern Nevada Memorial Hospital with my dad. And he said, well, what's your dad's name? And I told him. He goes, oh, yeah, I worked with him. So I knew I had the right guy. And I'm talking butterflies. Jim's sitting there on the bed with me. And it really took a lot for me I was on social media for like days ahead of time. Should I do this? Should I call? Should I write a letter? What do I do? I had a terrible fear of just popping in one day and surprising him and being completely rejected. That was going to be the worst thing, was if there was just total rejection. So it was a big risky thing, and it scared me. And I said, well, he passed away. And he says, well, I'm sorry to hear that. I said, I think you worked with my mom too. And he goes, oh. I said, yeah. He goes, well, what was her name? And so I said her name. And he didn't say, oh yeah, I worked with her too. I said, my mother's name was Artis. And he said, with a crackle in his voice, he said, oh, I loved your mother so much. Oh, I knew then, right, it was the right one. Thank you for the hug, sweetie. Thank you. Hello, my friend. Monica, hello. He goes, I loved your mother so much. And I was just speechless. And he said, he goes, do you have blue eyes? And I said, no. I said, I have brown eyes. He goes, oh, just like your mother. And I was like, oh my gosh, he remembered her eye color and everything. And this is 43 years later. And I said, do you know why I'm calling you? And he says, yes, you're calling me because I'm your father. Oh my gosh. All the feels, right? It was all the feels. I was just beside myself. And I said, yes, my mother just told me. That's where I got your name. And she just told me. And we talked for a little bit. And it's like, well, what do you want to do from here? And he says, if you want, I'll pay for a blood test. If you want to get a blood test, if you want to verify anything. And I said, no, I think the story and you confirming it is pretty much all I need. And he told me that, now see, I was born on April 21st. His birthday is April 22nd. And he was actually working in the radiology department the day that somebody said, hey, Artis was just admitted. She's in labor. And he had gone down to see me, where you can see through the windows. He had come down to see me the day I was born. And he brought my mother some flowers. And my mother said she felt my mother had two different views on it. She said, he could have bought me, it just looked like he went out in the field and picked flowers. And that's probably what he did. But she had to throw the flowers away before this other family that she married into showed up to visit her at the hospital, because she didn't want to have to explain who the flowers were from. That family knew that I was not my dad's child, but they thought I was the ex-husband's child. They did not know about this radiology tech. They all thought it was the ex-husband that did the deed. So she had to throw the flowers away before he could see them. But I asked him, I said, can you tell me about the day I was born and when you were at the hospital? He wouldn't talk about it. So I don't know what happened there. But I went up to visit him. I waited a month or so, and I went up to visit him. Free Hanley is at $9.95. Absolutely, we'll get her to 1,000. That is so exciting, Nisi. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, that's wonderful. I'll put something on my community page today. We'll see if we can get you out there and get you up to 1,000. I went to go meet my dad for the first time, and of course, I gave Jim the phone. I said, get lots of footage, get lots of pictures, and he didn't. It's like, okay, here's a posed picture, not the one that you see on TV and stuff. But it's weird because I had the address and I looked it on Google Maps before we went, so I could kind of get a lay of the land and what it was going to be like. And it was a very nice reunion after 43 years. And he told me that my mother had, I mean, imagine this, the way he worded it, imagine it. My mother snuck me out to see him when I was 6 weeks old. And my mother, again, snuck me out to meet him at a park so he could see me when I was 6 months old. And that was the last time he saw me, was when I was 6 months old. But just the fact that he said my mother had to sneak me out really breaks my heart, that my mother had to do that. She had to sneak me out. And I guess one of the terms of her getting married to my dad was, he said, under no circumstances am I ever to be told that he's not my father. That he said, this, I'm her dad. That is my baby. She's never to be told. So I know that there were times, like I would ask my brothers when I was older, and my brothers would go to my mother and say, you've got to tell her. She's asking questions. You've got to tell her. And my mother would go to my dad and he'd say, no, under no circumstances do you tell her. And so for 43 years, I was never told. But anyways, so I'm at my biological father's house. He's got this beautiful, like, hors d'oeuvre tray set up in champagne. And he was a recovering alcoholic. He hadn't drinking in years, but he had champagne with me. And we had this beautiful fruit and cheese tray. And we just sat, and he, gosh, where is it? It's, since I'm moving things, I don't know where it is off the top of my head. He brought out these pictures of my mother. And like I said, one of them's up there. And he told me about their rendezvous in Jerome, Arizona and all this stuff. And I said, would you like to call her? And again, like only a 1 or 2 second, you found out when you were 42, Red Road. It's amazing, isn't it? Changes your life. I called my mom. My mom was in a care facility because she had had this brain aneurysm. And of course, my dad had since passed. And she had moved back here to Iowa with my sister, and she was in a care facility. And so I called my mom and I said, Mom, somebody wants to say hi to you. And she doesn't know what I'm doing. I haven't said anything to my mother. And he gets on the phone and he said, Artis. And she knew who it was. And she said, Lyle. And he said, oh, my sweetheart. I mean, I'm going to cry. Oh, my darling, I've missed you so much. And they spoke for an hour on the phone, just back and forth, back and forth. And I really believe that was my mother's soulmate. I really believe it, because they instantly connected. And he sent her gifts in the mail, and they would call every week, and they would talk all the time. And it was really something to hear them talk to each other on the phone. And my mother had her own bitterness. You know, she always said day late, dollar short with him. And why didn't he ever follow through? And so I told her the story that he told me, and she never knew that he came back for her, but was threatened. And so many things he still wouldn't tell me, even up until he passed away. Don't be sad. It is a beautiful love story, because in the end, they reconnected. Always, always, oh, my darling and my sweetheart, and just all of these beautiful terms of endearment that they would have for each other. And he brought out these pictures that he'd kept hidden from his wife for all those years. And then during one of our visits, when I visited him, he brought out a wooden box, and the wooden box was very, very old. And I've got it here somewhere. And it had a label on it, and it said Old English. You guys remember Old English aftershave? And written in a felt pen, but pressed into the wood, it said, "For you, just because." And I recognized my mother's handwriting right away. She had very distinct handwriting. "For you, just because." And he held on to that aftershave and hid it from his wife all of those years. I got to know him. I got to know him a little bit. I knew him for 5 years before he passed away. And when I just met him, he had just had his gallbladder removed. He had just had gallbladder surgery. And when I first went up to see him the first time, he felt okay. But the second time I went to go see him on our birthdays, he didn't feel well. And I ended up, it was the most surreal thing. I said, "Let's just take you to the hospital and get you looked at," because he just wasn't feeling good and he wasn't eating and losing weight. And it was amazing because I did all the paperwork for him, and they kept saying, "And what's your relationship to the patient?" And he kept saying, "She's my daughter." And it felt so surreal to fill out paperwork and write down that I was his daughter. Unbelievable. But what's really weird, and we had a wonderful relationship for 5 years. And it was a blessing. It was a blessing. And he got to, meet my youngest son, who looks a lot like him. My third son, when I put pictures up of my biological father, my third son was like, "Mom, you are freaking me the F out." And I'm like, "What's wrong?" He goes, "It's like I'm looking in a mirror." I mean, my third son looks so much like my biological father. It's scary. And even my youngest son looks a lot like him, a lot. And if I knew how to screen share, I would try to pull something up. But and he met our oldest granddaughter, and when she met him, he said, she said to him, she goes, "What do I call you?" He says, "You can call me Opa." And so that was her Opa. And they would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go feed the bunnies and feed the roadrunners. And I've got pictures of them going all over his property. And the little animals on his property ate so much better than he ever did. But the really unique and strange thing is, so my birthday's the 21st. His is the 22nd. I was almost born on his birthday. When I was admitted through the emergency room in the early mornings of the 4th of July, 2015, and then rushed up to surgery, I had been brought out of surgery and out of recovery and brought back to my room. And my phone rang, my cell phone rang, and Papa Jim answered it. "Hello, Homestead Love, welcome." And it was my cousin who lives in Idaho. And I could hear Jim talking, and I, even though I was really still heavily sedated, I remember Jim just going into, "Okay, she's out of surgery. She's in recovery. The doctor removed this. They believe it's ovarian cancer, waiting for pathology. She's doing well." And then somebody else ended up getting on the phone because I could hear it was now a man on the phone. Well, what had happened is why my cousin didn't see the posts on Facebook that I was going into surgery. My cousin was calling to tell me that my dad was in the hospital, and that's why he wasn't returning my calls the few days I tried calling him. My dad was in the hospital, my biological father, and was not expected to make it, and that I needed to say my goodbyes. So when she heard that I almost died that day, my biological father and I almost died on the same day, because when I say I was rushed into surgery, I was rushed into surgery. I barely had time to reach my husband's hand. That tumor in my belly had twisted, and it was septic. So I had sepsis, and it was killing me. It was dying and taking me with it. So we almost died on the same day. But my husband was then talking to her husband, and that's when they told me that my dad wasn't expected to live through the day. And so we waited about an hour for me to come out of the anesthesia, a little bit more. Jim had told me what was going on. And I called my father, and you could hear people in the background as they held the phone to his ear, and I was talking to him. And it was the first time in days he had been responsive. And you could hear people crying, but like a cry of joy and sadness at the same time. They were like, oh my God, he hears her. He hears her. And he was actually responding to me, talking to him and thanking him for being my dad and for not rejecting me when I reached out to him, and that we had a wonderful 5 years together, and that I was so blessed to get to know him, and I will never forget him, and to thank you for loving my mother and all of these things. And he passed away later that night. So we almost died on the same day. So on the day I was diagnosed with cancer, I also lost my father. Don't cry. Don't cry, Monica. I'll start crying. So I've got my mom and my dad up there. Oh, let me grab it. Let me grab it. Let me show you. Let me grab these three. Since I told you their stories now. And I don't know if you've ever seen my lives when I was downstairs on the couch and there was that Marlboro Man cowboy. That was my biological dad. But this is how he looked at 28, fresh out of the Army. See if I can get it without a glare. There's him. Radiology. Later after he got done working at the hospital, he actually worked for the government out at Area 51 doing radiology tests out in airplanes. And they trained dogs out there. They would plant radioactive material in planes and then have dogs search it out and stuff. You think I look like him? Let me get where it's not a glare. Of course, I really look lovely today, don't I? Here, let me show you. This is my mama. This is my mother. This one shouldn't have as much of a glare because well, maybe it will. But there's my mom. Isn't she beautiful? My mother was a stunner. Look at that. Look at those teeth and those brown eyes. And those, her pearls, and her hair was always perfect. This is when, I believe this is one of her graduation pictures from when she graduated from nursing. But there's my mama with those brown eyes that he loved so much. My dad had blue eyes. And then I have this one up there too. It's got my mother's writing on the back. Like I said, I can recognize my mother's writing anywhere. Look at that. But look. Oh, there's that glare. Look, there's my mama. Look at that squishy face. That squishy face baby. Look at the dark circles under her eyes. Look how sad those dark circles are under her eyes. Look at, I was just a little squishy bug. Look at, I'm giving a thumbs up though. It's like, yay, I made it. I made it. So I used to think I looked an awful lot like my mom until I saw some pictures, and it's like, oh, my sister looks identical to my mother. But my sister also looks so much like her dad, my dad, her father. But so I got to have 5 years with him. I miss calling him. And what's really neat, yeah, she was exhausted. I have no idea how long I was in labor. But I was her third child, and it was one of those, back then they just kind of knocked you out. They knocked you out and pushed on your stomach to get the baby out. So she has no recollection of me being born. She did say though, that she remembers she was so hungry. And all she wanted was some hot chocolate and buttered toast. That's all she wanted. And nobody would tell her what she had, whether she had a boy or a girl. She kept asking this one nurse, and she said, you had a baby. She would tell her. And I guess it wasn't until my dad came in and told her that she had a little girl. But so I've started writing it because, I left the best part out. I left the best part out of this story. I told you before I have a blog, right? And so I write about these things in this blog. And what I didn't tell you, and I'll have to see if I can find a link, and I'll put a link in the comments below after this. I'll put it on the YouTube comments. I knew I was going to get to know who my father was based on what my mother started telling me this story. Well, my mother had a traumatic brain injury. You need to see this blog. Let me see if I can get a link right now. I shared this story about Rich Enough to Know the Difference. Let me see if I can find the correct story real quick here. I don't know how, I've got so many stories on here. I just don't remember what year I wrote this story in. Everybody grab popcorn because it's going to get good. I don't know if I should read you the story or just tell you from recollection the story. I should read you the story because just the title of the story is hysterical. But I have to find it. God, I got some good stories on here. So these stories were all written before I started telling you all of my stuff. So, I mean, you can prove that it's true. Now, can I screen share? Can I screen share this? Share. I want to share a screen. Okay, I understand. I want to do a Slim Jet tab. Oh, here it is. Here is the title of my story. Let me go back now and see if I can find it. I'm going to show it on the stream. Let me find the right configuration for this. How do I do it? Here we go. Here's my story. You won't be organizing. You're just going to scrap it. Okay, so the name of my blog, Monica, if you want to read some of my stories, is My Life as a Grape in a Box. It's My Life as a Grape at blogspot.com. Oh, sorry about the mess, Eric. It's Alicia's fault. She made me read her blog today. So here is my story. And this story was just the first excerpt of what I wanted to tell about meeting my biological father, but I actually only got this one written. So let me go back over to it. I'm going to see if I can read it. So the title of my story is This One Time at a Mexican Whorehouse. Now, I want to go back and I want to see what the reaction is going to be. Oh, okay. I'm already behind today because I'm glued to this live. Okay. So my story is titled This One Time at a Mexican Whorehouse. This is the important part that I left out about my mother telling me the story of who I am and why I'm here. So this was penned on February 4th, 2011. So this was about a full year after I met my biological father. So this one time at a Mexican whorehouse. Do I have your attention now? It starts. Well, my elderly mother certainly had my attention when those words came spilling out of her mouth like verbal vomit one heavy-hearted evening in 2009. Up until that point, the topic of discussion that day had been very somber as I was at my parents' home engaging in one of life's unfortunate realities that we all must face, the pending death of a parent. I have to scroll down. As my dad lay in his soon-to-be deathbed, not 10 feet from where my mother and I sat and watched, my mother took a deep breath and found the strength to open a dialogue and share with me a secret that had burdened her for over 40 years, a secret that I had anticipated for most of my life. My mother was about to reveal to me that the man in the nearby bed was not my biological father. She was about to relay the identity of my biological father and the related details of my existence. Although I had never let on to my mother that I knew my dad was not my biological father, it was in fact something I had known for a very long time. From a very early age, I had always felt that something was missing and that I somehow didn't always fit into the overall picture of our family unit like a square peg. Not to mention the fact that once I was old enough to calculate the gestational period of a typical pregnancy, I realized that my parents knew each other a mere 7 months when I was born. The truth was inevitable. I realized it was only a matter of time before someone spilled the beans, but nothing. Nothing in years and years of nothing until this very moment. My mother started to relay the story of me with bits of nostalgia, like the moment when she woke up in her hospital room and she asked my dad about the baby, and my dad told her that they had a beautiful baby girl, about how much I was loved and wanted, how my dad felt that a baby needed a name, a father, and that was why he had married her. He was adamant that he was my father and that the secret of my biological father's identity or existence was to never be revealed. And I don't know if you can see, as I'm scrolling on this other tab, yeah, you can see that I'm scrolling. So here's a picture of me and my mama the day that I came home from the hospital. And this is my oldest brother. And then well, they're both older, but this is the oldest, her first child. And then my second brother. I don't even know if anybody's listening anymore. Is anybody still here? Okay. But as she told me of instances where I would approach strange men in church and ask them if they were my daddy, a practice that became a regular habit from the early age of 3 and would continue through my formative years. A child just doesn't do something like that unless they had a sense that something is amiss. During my adolescent and teen years, I had rebellious stages where I wished my dad wasn't my dad, but he remained a strong presence despite my ever-growing hormonal-fed attitude and disregard for parental boundaries. After she laid the foundation for her story of how my dad had loved me even though I wasn't really his, there was a long pause. And then she took me with her on a journey back in time, back to 1960-something, when she had been forced into leaving her job as a nurse in Las Vegas and had ended up in Texas. She had been deposited in a little town just north of the Mexican border while going through a divorce from her first husband, who thought that after a year without him and his less than desirable ways, she would gladly take him back, faults, girlfriend, and all. She found a job as a private care nurse, made friends who helped her care for my 2 older brothers so she could work. She was barely surviving on her own, but somehow she made it work. At some point, a year later, her prospective ex returned to salvage his broken family and reinstate them to his idea of a state of grace, or so he thought. Little did he know that my mother had been involved in a love affair that would stand its own against the likes of The Notebook. She had experienced what love really was, and she wasn't quite ready to go back to her husband. Or was she? He'd been gone for a year, still had his girlfriend on the side, and had apparently experienced no personal growth during their separation. Yet when he came knocking at her door, she opened it and she let him in. While she was recounting the events leading up to this crucial pinnacle of her story, the identity of my biological father, she is looking at me with tired eyes that are nearly completely blinded from a brain injury, each eye setting its own fixed course, making her just a little bit tad cross-eyed, a trait that I have grown to love and appreciate in an odd way only a child can appreciate. She just keeps looking at me with tears welling up in her eyes, and I'm on bated breath to learn how I came to be. She's going to say a name, a moment, her secret. And it was at this exact point in her story that my poor mother's brain took a detour. Without warning, no segue from one story to the next, and I spelled segue wrong. I'll have to fix that. No segue from one story to the next. It's like her brain was experiencing something similar to channel surfing. And just when you get sucked into Steel Magnolias, someone hits the button on the remote and switches the channel to Three's Company. This is something that happens often since her brain injury and subsequent brain surgeries. And although I can generally salvage and interpret the mixed signals, this time I was just at a loss. Just when I think she's going to reveal to me the name I needed to hear, she tells me about how one night long ago, when her husband had come back to Texas to get her, and then there was this long pause. And after my brothers had fallen asleep, my mother had been coaxed into a late night drive with her ex. It was well after midnight, and they were on a lonely little highway. Another long pause, and it is at this point that I logically conclude that I must have been conceived in a car under an overpass. Boy, was I wrong. She continues to tell me how she was driven across the border into Mexico, where she was taken by her husband, her ex-husband, to a Mexican whorehouse. Yes, you heard that right, a Mexican whorehouse. My mother, who I had always viewed as a saint who never drank, never smoked, or did anything remotely naughty in her life, is not only telling me how she ended up in a whorehouse, but also revealed to me the services that were offered by the proprietor. I will let you use your imagination here, but it more or less involved any number of men, women, or combination thereof that could join you in your room. And in parentheses, I put insert 1978 porn music here. Oh, now to return you to your regularly scheduled program. Now, one thing you should know about me is I deal with stressful situations through humor, generally inappropriate humor, and I must admit that although completely shocked, I did manage to ask my mother if they had offered a donkey. Embarrassed to read that. She looked at me with a look that was a mix of shock, amazement, and curiosity. She was speechless, just looking at me with her little crossed eyes. Silence, crickets. And so I pipe up. What? No donkey on the menu? My mother was completely taken aback, but my continued comment on the subject was taken aback at my continued comment on the subject and said, "Do they have that? Really?" I thought I was going to die. Not only am I having a mind-blowing discussion with my mother that I'm sure less than a handful of people have ever experienced. And in my blog, I say, show of hands out there who's had a discussion with their mother about a night in a Mexican whorehouse. 1, 2. Okay, yeah, just 2 of you. Okay. I'm also reeling with the thought that my father may be Juan, Paco, Frederico, or heaven help me, Pepe the Mule. As my head starts to spin, I conclude that I may never know who my father is. ¿Dónde está mi padre, por favor? Another long pause. And as quickly as she had gone off on that little detour south of the border, she returned to her regular story without a hitch, like she'd never even taken the detour in the first place. She returned to her time in Texas and told me about how my father was a man that she had carried on a wonderful love affair with, a man that she had worked with in Las Vegas. A love affair that began as a long-distance relationship and had survived the distance between Texas and Nevada, necessitating occasional secret rendezvous in Arizona from time to time, involving hitchhiking, nights of drinking wine together, and love. It is my fervent belief that they had been each other's true love, but at some point back in 1966, their story took a detour, much like my mother's brain. It was a wonderful story, and I was totally engrossed. All the while, I kept one eye on my mother, one eye on my father, and blindly typed the info she was relaying into my phone just out of her failing eyesight. The setting was one that I had never envisioned, never fantasized about when I was younger, wondering how the news of who I was would be revealed. Some people question my mother's timing in telling me the identity of my biological father. They view her timing as cruel and heartless. I don't. I know it was a difficult thing for her to do, especially with her husband of almost 43 years slipping away with every tick of the clock within an arm's reach. Even more difficult, I would imagine, would be to carry that secret for so many years. I can't fathom how heart-wrenching that must have been for her. She told me that there were many times that she had wanted to tell me, but my dad would dissuade her. So, although some question my mother's motives, I know that what she did that night was give me an incredible gift. She gave me the opportunity to mend the holes I felt regarding my relationship with my dad. She softened the rough edges of this square peg, and I now knew who I was and how I came to be in this man's life. When nobody was around, I was able to lean over his bed, embrace him, and whisper in his ear what was on my heart about his role in my life. I thanked him for being a part of my and my mother's life. And then I put in parentheses that the story of my mother, my biological father, and my dad is a story that I'll share another time. That night, my mother gave me the gift of resolution. Not more than 20 minutes after my affirmation to my dad about his place in my life and in my heart, he passed away while I washed his face with a warm washcloth. Whew, a memory that still makes me cry. Oh, I didn't see that one coming. But on that night, my mother also gave me the gift of the identity of my biological father, whom I now am blessed to have in my life, along with an uncle and 3 amazing cousins and a rich family heritage. And she shared with me a great story about a trip to a Mexican whorehouse. It is at this point in my story that I must restore my mother's virtue and report that she spent that entire evening at that house of ill repute, sitting in a corner crying, while her husband was entertained by his guests that evening. He was actually upset that she didn't participate and enjoy his gift to her. But she wasn't raised that way. I think a box of Russell Stover's chocolates and a breakup letter to his girlfriend might have been a better choice, don't you? And then down here at the bottom, this is my dad that raised me. Went by CL. His name was Carol. But this picture here is taken at Papa Jim and I, our 25th wedding anniversary. We had a big party. And my dad was just walking around with a chicken wing just stuck in his mouth. The goofiest picture, but it's one of my favorite ones of him. All right, I'm back. Did everybody stick around and listen to the story? I don't know. How do I get rid of this? How do I make it so I'm like front and center again? I don't know. I don't want to hide that on stream. How do I get rid of this? I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, chocolates indeed. Should have been what he gave my mother. I don't know how to get rid of this other picture. The only thing it says I can do is hide myself on the stream, and I want to stop sharing. It says I am screen sharing. I want to stop screen sharing. It's going to take me a while to get to know. You heard most of it because Diesel decided to bark at me. Hi, Chris. Gosh, guys, I'm sorry I cried. I've shared this story so many times. And I thought I'd be past the point of crying. But I don't know, something about that last sentence in that one paragraph, about washing my dad's face as he passed away. That one got to me. I'm sorry. How do I get rid of this extra stream? This extra picture? Oh, hello. I'm back. Oh, let's make it so I've got a blue border. Can I make it so I've got the blue border again? So I'm not so big? Oh, well. Okay, guys. Oh, Dana, you're welcome. Oh, that part of the story made you feel, don't say sorry. Like you said, the story has all the feels. And Dana, you're welcome for that little gift for Cameron. I hope he enjoys that in wonderful, wonderful health. Dana over at Biddy Boo, she's got a little preemie grandbaby. So I sent him a little gift. And of course, now I can't even figure, I'm like I'm an idiot now. I can't even figure how to scroll up and see what I missed on the chat. Oh, well, you guys will forgive me. Now, the whole time I'm telling that story, Louis was in the corner over here. And like, I have to see, did he deposit himself in my coffee? No, he didn't. I still have good coffee. Yay. So I think, let me see here. I will copy and then I will come back over and I will paste. That's the story on my blog, and that way you can see other stories. And I hope I don't get in trouble with YouTube for the title of my story, but it's true. It's true. Gosh, that's something I could do for my quickie. I could ask people, have you ever been to this place? I wouldn't do that to anybody. Hello, Gagne Farms. How are you? You just missed my tear-jerking story. I'm still wiping up the tears, and I didn't mean to cry this morning. My goodness. But it is one of my better stories. And it's all true. And I do like to compare their love story to The Notebook. I know that it puts me in an awkward position. You cried too? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make anybody cry. You're injured piglet. Oh no, gonna binge read your life later. Okay. I hope the piggy's okay. And oh, there's the toggle. I can see who said that. Who's got an injured piggy? Oh, Monica has an injured piggy. I'm sorry. Sneaking on at lunch, you'll go back and watch. Okay, Gagne, that's fine. I'm glad you're here now. I was going to say something. I forgot what I was going to say. I was going to say something. It just flew right out of my brain. But I know what I was going to say. It puts me in a really strange position because, my older brothers, they have their father and they love their father. I got to know their father, and there was a long period of time where I wished he was my biological father. They called him Pop. I thought he was a great guy, but he just wasn't a great husband to my mother. But I know that they like to think that that was the love story. And then I've got my little sister who is a product of my mom and my dad's 43-year marriage. And I know that she would like to think that that was the true love story. And here I am saying, I think my biological parents is the true love story. And it's funny because after my mother passed, my brother would say, oh, I was mowing the lawn and two little birds flitted by, and I just know it was my mom and dad. And I thought, really? Do you think after everything they went through up in heaven, she's flitting around as a blue jay with him? I don't know. I'm glad you think that. But I don't want to hurt his feelings because that's his idea of his parents. And so sometimes when I tell the story and some of the fallouts that they had, her and her first husband, I feel guilty. But I really do think that my mother and my biological father, that was their Notebook story. And she had said so many times, like I said earlier, she'd said so many times, it must be wonderful to be married to your best friend. And I wish I knew what that was like. So she loved my dad, but I don't know that she was in love with my dad. And then she said he was a good life mate. But I don't know. I've got my mom in the cabinet behind me. And I have a small portion of my biological father in the cabinet behind me. And my sister has my dad who raised me. All three of them have been cremated. And I don't know. You guys give me your idea on this. I would like some feedback for those of you who are still in here with me now that I've told you this story. I've been contemplating this for, at least 5 years. I don't know if you've ever seen the, I don't want to say ads or promotionals, but the information, let's say the information. I don't know if you've ever seen the information there's a company in Oregon or Washington State. I'm not sure exactly where, but they make beautiful blown glass. And as a matter of fact, gosh, I don't even remember what they're called. I was going to see if I could screen share that, because since I have things pulled up, I don't know if that's something I can do. Anyways, they make blown glass, and they make beautiful round orbs. It's in Washington. You know what I'm speaking of, Laura? Ashes. Anyways, they make these beautiful, beautiful round hand-blown glass spheres or orbs, whatever you want to call them, ash art. And when they have the glass and they're getting, putting it in the fire and rolling it and making these beautiful shapes, they roll it in your loved one's ashes. Then as they work that glass and create this beautiful sculpture, I especially love the orbs, the spheres, because it really does just look like a universe, and swirled in there are the ashes. I've got to find it. Give me 1 second, because this is going to be crucial to me putting out there what I would like your opinion on. And I remember, you're right, it's Artful Ashes. And they're in Seattle. And I'm just going to see if I could pull their page up so I could show you their beautiful, beautiful work. There we go. I'm going to share a screen. It takes me a while. I'm sorry, guys. Let's get it here. A Slim Jet tab. Artful Ashes. Share. Okay. So, now where is it? I don't know why I can't see it. Anyways, I've done something wrong. Gosh darn it. I really wanted to see that. And I'm just not familiar enough yet with I don't know, it's giving me a bunch of warnings. I guess I did something wrong. Anyways, they have the beautiful spheres that look like, to me, it just looks like a universe. And your loved one's ashes are in there swirling around. It's very, very beautiful. They have these stands that you could put them on. It's a lighted stand. Very, very beautiful. And so I want to do that. But here's my thing. So here's the other thing. And if I could just bring the picture up, then it would just help so much. But I just don't know why I can't pull it up. Share. And I can't seem to get it. Anyways, the other shape that they do is a heart. And it's just this beautiful, beautiful blown glass heart, and then all the swirl of the ashes in it. My mother was born on Valentine's Day, and I really do believe that was their true love. So do I mix a little bit of my mother's ashes with a little bit of my biological father's ashes, and do I do it in a heart? The other thing they have, which I really wish I could just share that. I don't know why it's not working. Wait. There it is. I got it to work. Okay, so look. Here in the bottom left is the orb. And it's just gorgeous. And then you can see in the upper part, they've got hearts. And then now they have starfish. And I think the starfish are beautiful as well. If I scroll down on their page, they might have there's some smaller hearts that they can do. Oh, there it is. Look at that orb. Look at all of the ashes and everything that are mixed in there. It just looks like a universe to me. I just think they're so, so pretty. And I really want to do that. The reason I haven't done it yet is, there they are. Look at those swirled galaxies of universe on those lighted stands. I love them. But here's where I'm stuck. I love the starfish. I just think it's very exquisite looking. My mother was never really particularly a fan of the ocean, so starfish, I don't know. As I said, my mother was born on Valentine's Day, so hearts have always kind of been a central theme. And then, but I just love this orb. But here's where I'm stuck. If I get this round sphere, this orb that I like so much, I really have probably an irrational fear, but a fear that I will enjoy it and appreciate it. And I can relate to my children what it is. And after I pass away, they can enjoy it and appreciate it. But 2 or 3 generations down, I'm afraid somebody will look at that and go, what a weird paperweight. And they will donate it to the thrift store or to Goodwill or Salvation Army. But I want it to stay in the family. And you can have them engraved on the bottom. But it's like, I'm just so afraid that some people think it's a paperweight. Here's my thinking. I've got 2 trains of thought. One is to do the heart and have my mother and my biological father in the heart because I really believe they were soulmates. And I have both of their ashes here. My other thought is to do the universe, the globe, the sphere, and have all 3 of their ashes mixed together. My mother, my father, and my dad. Because without any one of those components, would I be here? Would I be the person I am today? And I've had a lot of people say your life would have been so different if you would have been raised by your biological father. And if your mom would have had that friendship, would they? Would it have been? Would my life have been different if I was raised in Las Vegas? I could have been a hood rat. I could have been running around the streets of Vegas and, who knows what I would have gotten into as a teenager in Las Vegas, as opposed to my dad always moving us out into the middle of oblivion and nowhere. You can engrave what's on the bottom. Yes. True. I will have no control over it. I don't know if I feel that way because sometimes I go to thrift stores and it's like, oh man, somebody got rid of this and this was somebody's keepsake. And then I buy it and I bring it home. So I've been thinking about doing this for a long time. Like I said, my dad passed away, my father passed away in 2015. My dad passed away in 2009, but my mother passed away in 2016, 10 months after I was diagnosed with cancer. Now my issue is actually opening the box and digging into the ashes to put it into the mailer to send it to the company. And my sister said she spoke to our local funeral home, and they will do that for us, but only if we go through their services to order something that they offer. So for instance, if we wanted it put in an urn or put in something else that they offer, they will do that. Heart, both together is my favorite. How about both? I could possibly do both. They're not cheap, but they're not overly expensive either. I mean, it's probably something I could, and I know Papa Jim wouldn't deny me either one. So I could do 2 if I wanted to. But I just really like the way that those globes look. It really is like its own little universe. See if I can. That's as close as it's going to let. Oh no, it will let me get closer. Look how they're like a universe. Isn't that beautiful? They're so beautiful. It's like a galaxy. I mean, if you look at the blue one and you look at the dark blue and then the green and then the lighter, it's like there's stars in there. Okay, Chris, thank you for jumping in. I wrote Sarah in the wee hours of the morning. But I think for 2022, maybe I will make this one of my goals, is to do this, because I haven't even opened up the box that my mother is in. I've never even opened it because I don't want to look at the ashes. My sister bought a beautiful, beautiful box for my mom and dad, and it has their names on it. And she needs my mother's ashes to put with my dad's ashes in this beautiful box that she has. But I haven't given my mother up yet. She's sitting behind me, and it's just like, my mother handled, or my sister handled everything. My sister had all of the paperwork for my mother for the funeral home and the cremation that was paid for in advance by my dad and everything. And so my sister handled all that. The night that my mother passed away, my sister had all of the paperwork, and she handled everything with the mortuary. And my mother passed away in May of 2016. And June came around. I was like, did you pick up Mom? And my sister said, no, I've been too busy. I haven't been able to do it. And then July came and went. And then August. And I would ask every once in a while, did you pick Mom up? No, I've just been too busy. And then September. And then October. And I was starting to get a little bit peeved. It's like, did you pick up Mom? No, I just haven't had time to go down and do that. And I had relayed to my brother. It's like, go pick up my mother. And he says, well, it's quite a drive. The crematory was, 4 or 5 hours away. He says, it's, she just probably doesn't have time to go pick her up. I said, it's literally 2 blocks from where I was sitting in our town. It was at the mortuary. So in 2016, just a couple days before Thanksgiving, even though I really didn't have the legal right because my sister had all the paperwork and handled everything, I marched into the funeral home, and I was met by the gentleman that works there. I said, I'm here to collect my mother. I said, my mother will be with me for Thanksgiving. And so I brought my mama home, and she was with us for Thanksgiving, and she's been up here in my little cabinet ever since. And I don't know. I need to give her back, though. Okay, how do I get rid of this? No, I don't want to do that. I want it out of here. Go away. I don't know how to get rid of it. I can't even really seem to get it out of the way. Let's put it over here. Nope. I mean, that's it right there. I'll sit over here. How about if I close out Facebook, will that do it? Ta-da, it's gone. So that is my deal. I know you guys have all been chatting and I've just been rambling on, but I need to give some thought about how to best approach. I think I really want to do the universe. I think I really just want to do the universe with a lighted base with my mother, my father, and my dad. I think that's what I want to do. And then I think, I don't know. I was going to say, I think I would save enough for a future globe if I pass away, and then it could be me, my mom, and my biological father all together again. But then I'd have to have Jim save some of me so he could be put in with one of me later. I mean, there's just only so many orbs I can think of right now. I'm hanging in there. How are you doing, Gagne Farms? Oh, goodness. So those are my stories. You know what? I told you guys I wasn't even going to tell stories today. I lied. I will engrave what's on the bottom. Heart both together is my favorite. How about both? That's what Tiny Tim said earlier. Oh, now I feel like I'm just emotionally spent. It is 12 o'clock. In 1 hour, I go live with the Ann Lynn Show. And I've got to do something with this mop. I probably should jump in the shower, throw on a little makeup, because I don't know if you guys saw what I shared. They did an intro promo to promote the fact that I'm going to be on their show today. And they quite literally put up pictures of me with my crown. I can't even tell where's the front, where's the back. Oh, they put up some of these. And so I need to clean myself up, throw on some makeup, And I think when I go on, this is the story of my life. Have you ever seen that thing that says, don't tell another woman that her crown is crooked, just help her straighten it out. Don't tell her it's crooked. This was the hardest one to ever wear. But like I said, I would normally, and it's so hard when you're in a mirror image and you don't know what you're doing. This used to have hair combs that would go into my hair, and then you could put pins so it would stay. But this is the one that I, for my national title. But I don't know if I'll wear that one today just for fun on their show. I think it'll be that when I meet with them in the back room, in the room before I go live, I think I'll just have my hair done. And I think when they take me down and they're talking about bringing me back up, when they do their introduction and everything, I think I'll just slip this crown on because it's much easier to wear. It's more adjustable. It sits better. The other one's prettier though, isn't it? That other one is the same crown that Miss Universe used to have. This one's just not as, it's not as eye-catching, is it? But I think I'll wear a crown for my life today. But of course, not with this hair and not without any makeup. And Lord knows not with these glasses. I'll have to have it without the glasses. My sash is put away. I don't think I can even reach my sashes. And I'll have to have a shirt that doesn't have lint on it. So, all right, guys. Well, I'm going to take my crooked crownage. I think what I'll try to do is emotions are natural. Don't ever apologize. Thank you. Thank you. I just don't like feeling like I'm bringing you guys down when I share those stories. But, I think they're cathartic. I think it's good to talk about them. Gives you guys a little bit of insight on who I am and what I do and why I am the way I am. Ooh, that looks pretty. I'm just a mess. Oh, have a great day, everybody. Great live, Alicia. Thank you. Not bringing you down. I appreciate it. I am going to go ahead and we're just going to cut this off now. Rip it off like a Band-Aid. I'm going to hang my pictures back up before anything happens to them of my sweet mama and my dad, my father. And next time we go live, now that I kind of know how to screen share, I will bring up the side-by-side of my son and my biological father so you can see why he was freaking out so much. So, all right, my friends, love to all of you. Thank you so much. Get some things done. And then I hope to see you at 2:00 Eastern, 1:00 Central over at the Ann Lynn Show. And we'll see what kind of things are going to toss my way and see if I can dodge some of them and see if we can have some laughs. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you so much. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye. And thank you for your help, Lisa. I didn't even know I wasn't live all that time. Okay, here we go. End stream.